Perfect, it should be going. Yes, recording. Okay, great. Cool. I can start with introductions. Hi, I'm Dina. I email you a lot. I am the editorial board experience manager for PLOS. My department is called the Editorial Board Services Department. And so we work across multiple different journals at PLOS. And then my role in particular is developing training materials, making sure that you have everything that you need in order to perform your academic editor or section editor role. So I'm going to pass it off to the first executive editor in my Zoom screen, Julia.
Hi, everybody. I'm Julia Robinson. I am the executive editor on PLOS Global Public Health, and I love seeing so many familiar names, and I'm very excited to put some faces to those as well. I am based in the Dallas area, and I am just really excited to have this opportunity to have a conversation with you all and hopefully answer any of those thorny questions that make your jobs harder. So our job is to make your jobs easier. Nice to see you. Why don't I popcorn? Jamie, you're right under me in the window, so it's off to you.
Thanks, Julia. And hi, everybody. My name is Jamie Males. I'm the executive editor of PLOS Climate. So I've met quite a few of you on the call today in various forums in the past, but it's great to see you here. And likewise, I'm really looking forward to having the chance to answer any burning questions you might have about the journal and how things work at PLOS. And I'll hand over to Debora.
Okay, hi, I'm Debora Walker. I'm the executive editor for PLOS Water, and based on the US East Coast. I'll leave it at that since Jamie and Julia have already said everything, and Dina, and we can get started on the actual questions you have.
Perfect. Yeah. And I just have a very brief poll just to get a sense of where everybody's calling in from.
Sorry, Dina. Can I just introduce myself? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Dina. Sorry.
Okay, don't worry. Hi, everybody. Lovely to see you all. It's my 8th day at PLOS, so I'm here, but please don't ask me any questions because I might not be able to answer. So I'm Zena Nkojo, and I joined last Monday as Associate Editorial Director of the journals that the executive editors run, and I drive forward the journal strategy in line with PLOS's mission and vision. So nice to see you all.
Welcome to PLOS 8 days ago.
Thanks, Dina.
my favorite question to ask new people who join PLOS is, have you memorized all of our acronyms yet?
I am trying my very best. I've got a Google Doc with all of it in, so I'm getting there slowly but surely.
Perfect. All right, let me just launch this poll real quick. You'll see 3 questions here. So trying to get a sense of where you're calling in from, what journal you're on the editorial board of, and then the reason that you joined our webinar session today. Once again, we need that background music. Huge Jeopardy theme. Perfect. Looks like the popcorn answers have kind of slowed, so I'm going to end and then display. Let's see, so we can see here that quite a few people calling in from North America, but really quite diverse as well. It's 3 a.m. in Australia, so I wasn't really necessarily expecting anyone to be joining from there, unless they're particularly a night owl or ambitious. Looks the representative participation matches about the size of our editorial boards, with public health being the largest, climate and water. And then, yeah, reasons for being here, just kind of soaking it all up, seeing what other people are asking questions yourself, and of course, both there. Perfect. That's really helpful to understand. Thank you very much. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to go into the pre-submitted questions that we got ahead of time. So if you remember when you registered, you could sign up and you had an option to submit questions ahead of time. And I think what I'd like to start with is the theme of the most asked question, which is all about securing reviewers. So maybe go around and I think maybe each of the executive editors, if you feel particularly strongly about suggesting tips and tricks for securing reviewers, you can pop in. And then if anyone on the call has strategies as well that they would like to share for securing reviewers, I think that would be really helpful for the group, because this is a problem across the whole peer review system. So let's go in backwards order. Deborah, do you want to start?
Sure. I think first things, what you probably guessed, there's no magic solution to finding reviewers, right? It's hard and everybody has other things to do. That being said, there are a few things we can encourage you to do in order to sort of secure reviewers relatively quickly. First of all, make use of your networks. If the people you invite know you or know of your work, they may be more inclined to accept invitations. Especially if you work within your networks, you may also be able to know, for example, PIs, the principal investigators themselves always usually get a lot of invitations. If you already know who their, say, senior postdocs are, try to contact these people. They may be able to give a good review, but may not be quite as sort of inundated by reviewing requests. Other things also sort of just in order to reduce your workload when inviting reviewers is try to sort of find a large-ish potential pool of reviewers and use the alternative function in Editorial Manager. So that means Editorial Manager will sort of invite new reviewers as soon as one declines, and without you having to log back into Editorial Manager every couple of days to go through the process again of finding and inviting reviewers. So maybe does anybody else want to chime in with other tips?
I would certainly echo what you said, Deborah, about the value of trying to encourage early career researchers to participate in the peer review process from two perspectives, both from your point of view as the handling editor. It's somewhat more likely that they'll accept your invitation, and it also gives them the opportunity as a reviewer to gain experience of participating as a reviewer, and hopefully will encourage them to be a more active and involved participant in future. And then to build off that, I think another kind of small intervention you can make as an editor that might increase the chances of the recipient of invitation accepting that invitation to review is to just invest a few moments in slightly tweaking the invitation letter that you send. So when you send an invitation through Editorial Manager, you do have the option to customize that invitation letter. And if you just add a sentence or two explaining perhaps why you think that the manuscript is a good match for their expertise, why you would particularly value their insights on that manuscript, then that can give them a sense of what they're bringing to the review of that submission, and might encourage them to look more favorably on the invitation. So that's another thing to bear in mind as a possibility. I
think the only thing that I would add, we get this question quite a lot. You know, we prefer to have 2 external peer reviewers for each manuscript. We do know that that's hard sometimes to secure 2 reviews in a timely fashion. So you're also able to provide your own review in addition to the external peer reviewers, if you have the time and capacity to do so. And that is also acceptable. So if you have 1 external reviewer in addition to your own review, and you feel that the manuscript has been thoroughly assessed in terms of methods and conclusions and these types of things, that is okay as well. So.
And I see Frederick's hand up. Did you have a comment on reviewers?
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Frederick, and I am editor with PLOS Climate. Yeah, I agree with Jamie about the tweaking the letter, but I also wanted to add, by default, at least in PLOS Climate, I don't know for other journals, but the default number of days is 10 days to review, and I personally find it very, very short, knowing everybody's busy schedule. So I usually increase this number when I ask for review. So from the get-go. So I don't know for other if this is a strategy, but at least this is mine.
How long do you increase the review turnaround time to?
Depends, 14, 21 days. I think, yeah,
So
2-3 weeks usually what I do.
Can you change it in the system, or is it in the letter of invite that you change the time? That's a very good.
You can from the from the system you can increase one by one, but at least yeah, you can change the number yourself.
Okay, thank you.
I can say a little bit about that. So I think relatively recently we changed the default, at least in PLOS Water, and I assume that's the same for PLOS Climate and PLOS GPH, but please correct me if I'm wrong. So I think the default currently should be 14 days. That being said, if you specifically, especially if you have a very long manuscript or one where, I don't know, there's a lot of methods, statistics to get through, you can, of course, change it. But one thing I would ask you to do, because this has resulted in sort of errors with an editorial manager before, do not set it to 0. That will sort of result in nobody ever getting any reminders about it, and then the manuscript could sort of languish. So yeah, you can change it within reason, but don't set the time to 0.
And Mohammed, you have your hand up here? Oh, you're still.
Yes, thank you very much, Dina. I'm Mohammed Afolabi. I'm based in the UK. I work with the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And I think I've had a number of Zoom meeting with Dina, and happy to meet with all the editorial executive editors. So thank you for the job, a very good job that you are doing to put the PLOS series in a very, very global map. So I want to echo the first and the second colleagues about one, using the potential reviewer within one's network, especially if you have also been doing that. You have been reviewing, I'll be helping, and it's natural that somebody will want to accept your invitation as an act of reciprocating your goodwill that you have already built. If you don't have good standing with colleagues or within your network, it will be challenging to achieve that. I have used the network since I started the role of academic editor, and it has worked perfectly well for me. So recently, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I accepted another invitation to handle a manuscript, and I went to search. So out of 4 or 5 reviewer I requested, none of them accepted. Only those 2 from my network accepted to agree to review, and one has actually completed the review and came back. So I want to say that it's just like a kind of a paying back in kind if one has been up and doing within one network. Secondly, I also agree with the aspect of increasing the length of time to return. This turnaround time is also very, very important. And as a default, when I receive any invitation and they are asking for 7 or 10 days, I just click decline, because that is not considerate enough, given the kind of a tight schedule, and somebody is requesting that one should return in 7 to 10 days or request for additional days. So I think it should be a kind of the policy of the PLOS journals to sort of kind of review upward, maybe 14, 21 days. So, and that will be much more considerable. The last but not the least that I want to mention is the aspect of incentive. I think it's high time we incentivize the aspect of reviewing journals, because it has been challenging since the pandemic. And some other journals, they have found a very clever way of maintaining their profile of reviewers by offering some incentive, not only saying that they are going to be recognized. So some people want to see if they review for you, are you offering them something like a token of if you now come to publish within a period of 1 year to 18 months, you are going to get like 20 or 10% of your APC. I think it has worked well in some journals that I've seen. So maybe PLOS could consider this. Thank you. Over.
Thank you very much. And Angela, you have your hand raised as well.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for the invitation. I'm not sure why my video is not working. Yeah, so following on from the previous speaker, and also a question in the chat, two things. Incentivizing peer review, I think, is really important. I think that there is an issue. Obviously, people are not really looking for money, cash money, but they are looking for a reason to spend their time doing your peer review rather than writing their next grant or writing their next lecture. And I think journals have to really take that on board. Academic institutions do not really give you a lot of credit for citizenship otherwise. You know, if you're in an academic institution, they're interested in your grants and your papers. They don't really care how many peer reviews you've done. They don't really care what other external citizenship you're doing at that level. I think quality of peer review is really a critical issue, and I'll be interested to hear how PLOS as a family is engaging in optimizing the quality of peer review. There was a question earlier on in the chat about training for us as academic editors. I think there's another question about improving the quality of peer review. I think it is a very hit and miss business, and I wonder what responsibility PLOS feels for improving the quality of peer review more generally. I think we've all been subject to adverse outcomes from somebody who clearly just hasn't read the paper or hasn't had the time or the skills to really address what that paper is trying to say.
I think that's an excellent
The two
segue.
issues, incentives and quality.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. Any of the executive editors want to address the question of quality and peer review?
Well, one thing I can say in response to that is that beyond the resources and the guidance that we provide for reviewers when they take on the assignment to review a manuscript, is that we also, of course, offer on all of our journals, all the PLOS journals across the portfolio, the option for authors to opt in for transparent peer review. So this is a slightly different dimension of the question, and maybe takes us into a different conversation or an adjacent conversation that I'd be fascinated to hear your perspectives on, as to whether opening up the peer review process and allowing that level of scrutiny on the contribution that the reviewers are making to the assessment of the submission is something that encourages a more positive and productive experience for everyone involved. That's certainly the ethos in which PLOS entered into this decision a few years ago to offer transparent peer review on all of our journals. And I think it is something where we've seen both a very good level of uptake among our authorship, and also a lot of positive feedback in terms of the way that people do see that carrying over into a more focused and a more objective peer review process, in which the contributions of the reviewers are perhaps, for want of a better word, better than they otherwise would be. So I think that's one avenue down which we can go in terms of trying to optimize the experience. I'm sure there are other interventions and actions that PLOS is taking or could take, and I don't know if Julia or Deborah want to say anything more on that.
I think it's Angela, I think it's a really excellent point. I'm glad that you brought up, especially the point about quality of peer reviews. We occasionally, as executive editors, we will sometimes be looped into different review processes to check out the quality of peer reviews, sometimes intervene to invite additional reviewers or consult with academic editors, these types of things. And so we know that that can be an issue. And it's unfortunate because it feels like a lot of people have a lot of wasted time when you get a poor quality peer review. It delays everything, and nobody's happy when that has to happen. I think it's a good point, and I think that it's something that we can take back to PLOS to think about what kinds of resources do we offer for peer reviewers. We do have, as Jamie mentioned, tons of resources for academic editors. We offer trainings on a quarterly quarterly-ish basis for all of our new academic editors. And we do open that up too for any existing academic editors who maybe either want a refresher or they weren't able to make it the last time we had a training. But I think that that's an important point, and I think it's something that potentially the academic editors could pass on to their peer reviewers in the invitations to have tips about what kinds of elements go into a quality peer review. It is something that we do ask our academic editors. I guess it goes back to the choice of peer reviewers as well, understanding the peer reviewers' qualifications. I know that's hard and it can be time consuming, especially if you're reaching out to somebody who's not in your network. But thinking about all aspects of the manuscript that we need to be assessed. So both topic, subject area, as well as methodology, that can be a difficult balance. And sometimes you do just get a real clunker of a review in return, and that's frustrating. We can always try to help. If you ever need guidance from PLOS, you can always email into us or start a discussion through Editorial Manager, and we can try to help point to resources or to additional guidance.
And on the issue of incentivizing peer review, that really is an issue. You started the conversation with how difficult it is to get peer reviews. We've made the discussion more complex by saying how difficult it is to get good peer reviews. The resource here is academia. How are you working with academia to incentivize peer review? Because that's the competition, isn't it? Do they do your review, or do they write their grant? I'm really interested to understand how you're engaging to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, I sorry to jump in there, but I think that's definitely something that is firmly on PLOS's radar, and there are many conversations happening, probably at a level that's slightly above ours as the editors of our individual journals. But PLOS has some fantastic advocates for this kind of more transformative change in the whole kind of system of academia and publishing, who are working on that actively with partners across the different sectors involved. So it's not something that we can necessarily speak to ourselves in this forum, but that's conversations are certainly happening elsewhere within PLOS and beyond to try to make that change happen. And I think also, just to kind of build on that in terms of the business side of things, there have been questions, and I've seen some comments in the chat here about the possibilities that might exist around financial incentives or discounts on publication fees and this kind of thing. And we're more than happy to relay that feedback on to relevant parties at PLOS. But obviously, as editors of journals, that's not the kind of thing that we're directly involved in or able to comment on. But as I say, we can certainly pass on suggestions and thoughts on all of these things.
I would if I can make one last point, if you can only do one thing, getting a discount on the publication of your next journal is a material, concrete, tangible incentive that will appeal to many academics.
All right, Judy, I'm going to go to you next.
Completely concur with Angela, and I won't repeat what she said, but just to emphasize, the issue of training is really important, and that will help in terms of the quality of manuscript. But for me, I'm with PLOS Global Public Health, and I'm an African and live and work here in Africa. Number one, the context is so important, and I think there needs to be an effort. You can see in your poll, we are 5%. I'm not sure how many of, 5% representing Africa. And there are certain realities that I see as I've done this work in the last 1 year that are really important. Number one is just the how can I say, the lack of representation, I think is critical. And maybe in light of what Angela is saying on incentivizing, it's important, I think, to begin to open it out further and to make a concerted effort to bring in Africa. Now, when I see the reviews that come in, I'm sent reviews of countries that I have no complete context. So I think, in my view, it's unfair to review something that you don't understand the context well. So that kind of makes my work a little bit difficult, and maybe that's sort of the question, and maybe the training will help, or maybe a concerted effort around Africa, if I may, because I don't know, but I think we are unique. The other thing is manuscripts that come in that have no need for my expertise. So I'm looking at something and I'm like, this is not in my area. Why did it come to me? So I think some kind of a more tweaking the expertise so that, you know, we waste a lot of time when I look at something that's asking me to do something on orthopedic surgery and I'm like, I know nothing about this. And so that's one aspect perhaps around the quality of manuscript. So if we can tweak the system a little bit to really hone in on it goes to the correct expertise, if I may. I would like to know what happens after reviews, because I think this is very helpful. I don't know about others, but when I review and send something through, I never get back to see if it was really published, where it was published, how it came out, when it got published, to see if the review that we did actually made the difference. So it's sort of just going blind and you send it in and you're like, well, you know, editor, manuscript, you know, we do review, recommend, major, the author comes back, does the review and blah, 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 and you finish that and it goes into the ether and you're not sure if how it actually came out after that fact. So for me, I think those are some of the questions and comments all rolled into one. Thank you.
So I think, oh,
sorry, go ahead, Debora.
I can at least say something to sort of your last point about that as a reviewer, you never actually know what's going on. So I think we at PLOS strive to do, so I mean, overall, we do strive to be transparent about our processes, and that includes telling reviewers what we're, so by default, I think reviewers are always get sent a copy of the decision letter so that they know that whatever they recommend, right, they will be able to see what the editor did with that information they provided, and will also possibly be able to read sort of the reasoning the editor provides to the authors for making that decision. So
my question is a little bit different, Debora. That's very true. That happens, but what happens to the manuscript after that? Because the assumption is, you know, you send it in and it's supposed to be published. Is it possible to get the final result of that whole process to us, the editor, so that you have a sense that my work is, how can I explain, is sensible? I'm doing something, you know, because if we edit a manuscript and it's never published, so I don't know, so I keep doing this work which never gets published, you know, so I don't know that final decision. I seemingly don't get. I don't know if it's me, but I think that's sort of the question, not so much to the author. I know the author gets our feedback, certainly, but then to us, like for me, the section editor, I have no clue how many nursing and midwifery manuscripts were published, say in 2022, which I was part of that process of editing, I think is the question. So then it helps me to know, none were actually published, not even one, because it went somewhere and then it's still in the pipeline or something like that. Hope my question is clear. Thank you.
I think this is more an operational question for our production team. This question has come up before. So I'm gonna follow up with our publication team specifically to see what we can do about CCing you, because we do email the authors, letting them know that their paper is about to be published online. So it seems to me that we could add a CC to the handling academic editor as well. I'll follow up about that. I'm going to move to Patrick.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I understand. Yeah, it does. It just kind of floats off into the internet somewhere. Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we need to, my experiences with the incentives have been very bad. So I'm just going to take a contrary position to this, that incentivizes bad reviews. Okay. And I have a lot of experience in publishing since 2010. I've been an associate editor for many different journals, reviewer. I've reviewed over 500 manuscripts. So I mean, I've been in this realm for a long time. So I'm just going to tell you that there's another publisher who does this, and they get reviews within 6 days, and you should take a look at what they get. That's not what I want to get as an editor. The second part is, I think we need to change this conversation when we talk about reviewers to two types of reviewers. There's an expert content reviewer and a methodological reviewer. I'm a methodologist. So I don't send poop out, okay? I send manuscripts out that are salvageable if they have problems but I don't send methodologically flawed articles like that don't have a clearly stated research question with a theoretical background or conceptual model, okay? And so when I ask my colleagues to review, they review for me, okay? Because I respect their time enough not to send them that. Number two, I think this gets back into that point that I think the editors have to spend more time rejecting articles, but I think we need to have a reject and resubmit, because I don't want to put a major revision on something and wait forever and ever and ever for this article to come back to me. But some of the articles we're getting are just, quite frankly, too damn rough to send out for review, and I don't want my name on them because my colleagues will be like, what is this? And I'm already getting complaints from different journals. Like my colleagues are, why are you sending me this garbage? And that's not the word they use, you know? And they're right. It's not methodologically sound. And I think we have to recognize this, because there's three types of papers. There's papers where people are they're scavengers. They're sending them out to every journal, okay? And then they reject and they send it to the next one. Then there's people that we were just talking about from low-income countries. I'm in South America, where they have good research, but they didn't report it correctly. And those are the people where I send back extensive editorial comments to them to make revisions. And then they come back, and after 2 or 3 rounds, their paper is published, because it's not that it's methodologically flawed. It's just that they don't know how to do it well. And I accept that responsibility in this journal, okay? Then the third type of paper, which we're not getting many right now because our stats are not very high in terms of Scopus and Web of Science, is what? The pristine papers that are coming from funded researchers, right? And so I think we have to recognize these variables. And the last thing I want to say is, I'm not very happy about the way the staff send me emails and just tell me you have 24 hours to respond. I can't even respond to my wife sometimes within 24 hours, okay? And so I'm just going to tell you right now that that's just unacceptable. And I've had papers taken away from me, I'll admit this, but I've got things going on with them. I'm either editing them myself or doing things with those papers. And I'm sorry, you're not going to get a response from me unless it's just like an emergency where you text me within 24 hours. It's just not going to happen. And I think it's unacceptable that we have people just plucking these papers out of our editorial system, especially sometimes when we're following up. Where is this paper? It was it's in the technical checks. And then I don't have time to manage it when they get it to me. And then 2 days later, they pluck it out of my box. Okay, this is just unacceptable. So I think we need to look at this more holistically. My final comment is this. I think PLOS needs to help all of us by advocating for universities, including in their tenure process, editing and reviewing. The real fundamental problem right now, and I've talked to all my senior scholars, the old folks that are in retirement, enjoying their time on the beach. They send us emails, please remove me from your system because I don't want to be reviewing anymore. I'm retired, right? They've all told me the same thing. Tenure and promotion required reviewing, and it required editing, okay? And that's not the case anymore. In Spain, it is the case, evidently. You can't get promoted without being an editor. So everybody from Spain wants to be an editor for 2 years, from what I understand. But I think we need to be realistic about the fact that none of us are doing this because we have to do it. I mean, we enjoy writing, we enjoy editing, we enjoy reviewing. But I think PLOS needs to have a huge campaign to make this part of the academic world again. This task, this professional responsibility has fallen off the ship. Okay, it's fallen off the ship. Nobody values editing. Nobody values reviewing in any universities. I don't care if it's the United States, South America, any region of the world. So if PLOS can do one thing, in my opinion, it'll be to make editing and reviewing a part of the academy again. So I'll not say anything else more this meeting, but I really think these are very important points. I'm just sharing my experiences with you. Thank you.
Patrick, I want to reply to just a couple of things before we move on in the conversation. So I thank you for bringing up reject before review. That is an option that I think is underutilized probably on all of our journals. It is something you do not have to send every paper that you get or every paper that you accept out to review. And in fact, we would love it if you would accept to handle a paper that you know should be rejected. That's
But
That's
how do we,
good.
but Julia, but it's to reject and resubmit. What I don't want to
So
do, and this
I
is
was
where
gonna-
I'm having a hard
Yep.
time. Okay, thank you. See,
I'm going to get to this. So one option that all editors have available at any point along the review process is to do what we call kind of in-house, I guess we call it an open reject. So this is kind of like a softer rejection letter. It's something where you see merits in the work. You see merits in either the authorship team or what they're trying to do. It might be an extensive rewrite. But if you want to give the authors encouragement to do that, we support you 100%. I often give editors this feedback to say, you don't have to say never submit it again. In fact, you can say submit it again and explain in the letter that you have in their cover letter that you've already submitted this, you got the feedback, here's how they incorporated it, and here is the new version. These are for papers that do have to be, I mean, it's beyond a major revision, right? It would have to be completely reworked. Occasionally, it's even something where they're gonna have to do the study over again, potentially, but you've given them feedback on how to do it better, and they go and implement that. So that's something that we very much support across PLOS. All of our journals, we support that. There are so many other comments that you made, and it was a really rich, and thank you for sharing your experience. I want to open it up to see if any of the other EEs have anything that they'd like to add on to what Patrick said before we move on.
Well, I can certainly say that, you know, as Julia's just said, there was a lot in there that we need to take away and we need to think about. I think your last point about being advocates for reinvigorating this sense of editorial and reviewer service as being a fundamental part of what it means to be an active researcher is certainly something that I think we need to think more about, you know, how we can support that mission. One thing that I wanted to pick up on again that was kind of picked up on slightly in Patrick's points and also earlier by Judy is this question of the context in which the study has been performed and how that kind of holistic picture of what's reported in a manuscript is reflected in the review process. So one thing that I would say is that we are strongly encouraging of our editors to think about the both the content of the study and its context when they think about reviewer selection. So making sure that both the let's say the study population, for instance, and the methods that have been used to execute the study are both reflected in the expertise of the pool of reviewers who assess that manuscript. So recognizing the fact that our journals have all independently been specifically designed to be very interdisciplinary, this is something that's obviously kind of key to what we're about. And I think beyond that, there was also this question, particularly in Judy's comments, around the question of appropriate diversity in the reviewers and ensuring that we have people from relevant backgrounds, be that from a particular country, a particular region, available to share their expertise during the review process. I think this is the kind of thing that we've been thinking very hard about from the point of view of the composition of our editorial boards. And when we established our new journals a couple of years ago now, we very intentionally set out to bring together very diverse perspectives in our editors. And I think we're seeing that, for instance, in this call today, that we have a wonderfully globally diverse pool of people here. What we've perhaps not thought about so much or acted on so much is trying to ensure that we achieve the same level of diversity among our reviewers. And I think it's for us now to think about how we make participation in the review process more accessible and more available to people from different backgrounds, in the same way that we have had some success with in putting together our editorial boards. So thank you for reminding us of the importance of that. And that's definitely something that we need to prioritize and think about further.
Angela, go ahead.
Thank you. So following on from what Patrick said, I want to push back again on the issue of incentivization. So what I want to say is to incentivize good reviews. And good reviews, I still feel, and it touches a bit on what Judy said in terms of closing the feedback loop. You know, how do we feedback positively to people who have submitted good reviews, and how do we improve the quality of reviews that are coming from people who have given poor reviews? You know, it seems to be a one-sided conversation. You ask for a review, the review comes back, and that's it. what we know, research tells us that feedback itself is A, an incentive, and B, an important means of improving quality you know, that if you think about the quality improvement cycle, it will require a lot of work, and some of that work will fall on us as editors. But if you want to improve the diversity of the peer review pool, if you want to incentivize peer review itself, if you want to engage with academia, because doing a peer review has an opportunity cost, and making that reviewer see that the time they spend doing your review is worth the opportunity cost is a complex business. And you know, I really applaud what Patrick was saying in terms of getting peer review back off the boat, back onto the boat. But there is a lot of competition where, you know, academics are fighting for shrinking funds, particularly in the field of global health, which is the journal that I represent. So feedback, how do you improve peer review through feedback? How do you incentivize good peer review? And that word good means that an evaluation has been made and some feedback has given to incentivize continued good reviews and to improve bad reviews. Because you don't want to just throw, you know, if somebody gives you a bad review, that doesn't necessarily mean they are a bad reviewer. It just may mean that they don't know how to give a good review. You know, PLOS is making money here, and you need to speculate to accumulate, I think. Is that helpful?
I mean, I can just quickly say something on that. Yeah, thank you for those comments, Angela. I think one thing that we do try to do in situations where we feel that the comments that a particular reviewer has provided are not sufficient or adequate, don't meet the guidelines that we have for reviews in some way. We do have mechanisms for providing feedback, whether that's via the academic editor, and perhaps there's more we can do to ensure that editors are aware that that they are able to do that and have resources to do so. But in other cases, it will come direct from the journal office as well. So there is, in some sense, the opportunity for feedback to go back to reviewers. I agree that there's probably far more that could be done at a more kind of a community level to embody that kind of ethos and practice. So that's one thing. And then just a very quick comment on the final thing that you said there about PLOS making money from this, just to reiterate for everyone's awareness that PLOS is non-profit, just to make sure everyone knows that.
I didn't know that, actually. I didn't know that.
Okay, well, I hope it's good news.
Well, you need to make more of that, because I think people might be better disposed to you if that was more widely known.
Thank you. Yeah,
Claudia, go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dina.
I'm just going to call Claudia.
Hi, hello, I'm Claudia from Global Public Health from Chile. I don't know if you're taking into account all the comments in the chat. Okay, just want to put a little bit more attention to the ethics. Every manuscript that arrives must have an ethical approval. Of course, it's research with humans. So because and you need to check that before to send it to us, because if it doesn't go to IRB or ethic approval, we're not going to waste time on that. And again, going back to the very beginning, 10 days is not enough, 14, maybe 21. I reject reviews for our journals from 14 days. But mostly I want to put attention in the IRB and ethics approval. And with Julia, we have talks about, but I believe that our conversations about the cost of publishing is not for this forum.
Yeah, Claudia, I can respond to the IRB check. So before any manuscript arrives, before you get any invitations to a manuscript, it has been assessed by a PLOS staff editor. So we do checks for IRB approval. We do also recognize that you all are the experts in all of your individual subject areas. So it is quite possible, I think it is quite rare, but it is possible that maybe a study that we deemed doesn't need IRB approval, you from your expert perspective assess that it does. So that is something that you are free to get back in touch with us, say this needs to be sent back to the authors for IRB approval before we do anything with the peer review process, and we will take that feedback quite seriously. I can also share with you all today that as of today, we have a strengthened human subjects approval policy in place. We just posted something on our blog and the PLOS blog about this. You all can feel free to take a look at that whenever you'd like. It's not going to impact your jobs at all, other than to know that we are checking even more stringently for IRB approval documents before anything gets to your inboxes. So we are working very hard to make sure that any research that we publish has the most strict IRB requirements possible, or oversight, I should say, possible. But I'm happy to follow up with you, Claudia, if there's any individual concerns you have about papers, or if you want to continue to have this conversation, I'm happy to talk with you anytime.
Okay.
Carmen, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everybody. I really think that we all are senior researchers with a long way in doing research, reviewing, editing, publishing, reviewing articles. So for me, basically, it's very important to be part of PLOS Global Public Health, because I believe that it's a very important journal in terms of the process or the task of decolonized research. And in this point, I just want to talk about two situations. One is how to increase reviewers from Africa and Latin America and some countries in Asia. The topic that Jamie said about it, maybe we need the help of PLOS, because in every paper, I want to find reviewers from other regions, and it's difficult to find reviewers. So maybe we can do something about that, because it's very important. And I ended selecting reviewers from other countries because I don't find a specific reviewer for the papers. And the other issue is that sometimes I don't know what to do. It's something that it bothers me, because many papers or some papers come from one author from Africa, for example, or from Latin America, and the rest of authors, 4 or 5 from London, from the USA, and I don't know exactly. I think that PLOS have rules about this, but it's not clear to me how to decide that this is a right thing to do or not, because it's something that is frequent with papers from PLOS Global Public Health, and I don't know if the editors had some opinion about that.
So I think I can say a few words sort of about the last part where you say you get research where just one author comes from maybe the country where the research was actually conducted, yes. And most of the other authors, or all of them, come from potentially sort of high income countries somewhere else, and you don't exactly know what to do with it. So I mean, sort of having international author teams is very common, right? The question then arises sort of at what point do we think something like helicopter science may be going on? So PLOS we do have a policy in place, which is, we call it our inclusivity in global research policy. If you get a manuscript where this policy applies, you should see this in the manuscript details with sort of some basic information on it. But basically how we handle that is if the research was conducted in a country and neither the first nor the corresponding authors are based in that country, then we require the authors at revision to fill out a questionnaire explaining their process, their work process, how they work with local communities, and provide sort of some details on local sort of approvals and sort of various aspects of the research that apply to that may or may not apply, and they have to fill out this questionnaire, and it gets submitted together with the revision and is available to you as editors to look over to see if there's sort of any potential ethical issues. So we do not have specific guidelines on things that need to be in there in order to sort of be publishable for the research, because there are just sort of too many scenarios that would be hard to capture with one clear policy. But this questionnaire will get published along with the article, if the article gets published eventually. Just sort of, so that's sort of PLOS's way to at least increase transparency around how the research was generated. And I know there are reasonable conversations to be had about how much further you could take this policy, and sort of incentives to work more with local communities. And I think these conversations are happening, but I don't think we have sort of anything beyond this current policy planned and sort of to advance that further at this time. But I'm happy to, well, we are probably all happy to sort of get feedback from you on how you think this is working, what direction this should be moving in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mohammed, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to say something concerning the getting reviewers from Africa. So I think it's very, very important, and also it's important that this should be given a very high priority. I want to mention that there are a number of us. I'm from Africa. I'm proudly African, but I live in the UK, and I could see a couple of my colleagues, Dr. Angela Obasi. So nice to meet you in person. I've seen your picture before at Liverpool. I'm happy to see you again. So I think it's very, very important. So there are a number of us who are from African descent, but are currently either in Europe, in the Americas, or the Pacific, and so on and so forth. So we can use a kind of a snowballing method to get people in our network to recommend them, and we can increase the pool of either the reviewer or the academic editors. With this, it can help to get reviewers and editors who have the understanding of the context. So I really have come across situation whereby a malaria paper is being reviewed by people who have never had the experience or do not have the background knowledge about malaria, and it goes a lot about the quality of the peer review. That's one question or one comment that I would like to add. The second one, I think I've put this forward to Dina before during our private conversation. So I'm wondering what the executive editors are doing concerning indexing PLOS Global Journal or other portfolio of PLOS in PubMed. So I don't know. I will be very happy to know the update. Then secondly, I'm talking about PLOS Global Public Health because I serve as an academic editor in that for like about more than a year now. So I'm wondering when when we should expect the PLOS Global Public Health to have the first impact factor. This is very important. Although we know that impact factor is not the most important thing for any journal, but it goes a long way in making the journal to be attractive. It's like I've been kind of the spokesperson of a PLOS Global Public Health amongst my colleagues, where they used to ask me, what's the impact factor? So I want to be able to give them a kind of a valid question when next I'm asked. So, but currently PLOS Global Public Health, despite it has done very well within a short time, it's not indexed in PubMed, and people want that feasibility, and it doesn't have an impact factor. So please, I would like to ask if we can get a positive feedback on that aspect. I don't know whether I should hold on with my third question because I can see that Julia wants to respond to the first and second comment I've made. I have the last one. I can hold on for now.
Mohammed, my responses can be pretty quick. So I think one of the most beautiful things about the PLOS Global Public Health community is the sheer faith they put in us when we started. And it was amazing. We had an overwhelming amount of submissions, even though we were brand new, even though we're not indexed, even though we don't have an impact factor. They saw what we were trying to do and they believed in us. And if I continue to talk about it, I will get choked up, I promise you. So that said, we know how important it is, that discoverability of having our journal indexed. We are actually indexed in many places already, but we are not yet indexed in PubMed. This is the thing that everyone asks us about, is a date of when we are going to do that. I can tell you all, it will be soon. It is not yet, but it is something that we have been working on as hard as we possibly can, because we know how important it is that authors' work can be found. So please know that this is an utmost priority for us, and we know how much it matters to our authors and our community, and we are working as hard as we can, and we hope to have good news for everybody in the very near future.
That's very reassuring.
Sorry, let me just jump in one more time, just to remind everybody of the time. I want to be conscious of everybody's time. We just have a couple more minutes before the hour. So I think we can stay on maybe an extra 5 minutes, but then I'm going to close it down. Again, I've recorded everything and we'll be sending out follow-up to everybody here. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Okay, thank you. I'll make it very snappy. The last one, there was a manuscript that was submitted to PLOS Global Health, and it was rejected on the basis that it wasn't invited. I've sent it to Dina and the other Global Public Health something. I would appreciate if you can kindly have a look, because this particular manuscript does not fit into the formal comment that has to be commissioned or invited. So I think it will go a long way, because I could see the content of the manuscript is something that will be well received if published in public global public health. I don't want to talk more than this, because I'm one of the co-authors on this paper. So, but I think, and I don't want to influence your decision on that. So, but I forwarded a copy to you. So, and I will appreciate what you feel. If we are not going to submit it, that's fine. Thank you.
Mohammed, I can jump in to say that any reviews, formal comments and opinions have to be commissioned by, or not formal comment, but any reviews and opinions have to be commissioned by the editors-in-chief and myself. So please just go ahead and email me, and hopefully we can talk about this specific piece. Does that sound good?
Oh, that's very good.
Great.
I don't have your email.
I'll drop it into the chat.
Okay,
I'll drop it into the chat, and I can follow up with you after this if you'd like.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you.
On that note, can I just quickly jump in to pass on the apologies of our editors-in-chief that they weren't able to make it to the meeting today, but we will relay everything that we've discussed with you here to them. I'm sure they'll be really interested to hear the perspectives that we've heard at this meeting, so thank you for sharing that.
All right, Angela, do you want to round us out here?
Yeah, so thank you for that. I'm following up on the issue of inclusivity and equity in research. I was a senior author on the consensus statement that was published in Anesthesia that promoted reflexivity statements as a engine for transparency about including LMIC authors with joint high-income country and LMIC projects. And I'm really interested that PLOS Global Health has taken a slightly different turn. What we recommended was that these things come up upfront by default, whereas it sounds like PLOS wants us as editors to make a judgment as to whether some kind of statement is needed. And I'm interested, how are you evaluating that? How is that going, basically? Because it seems, on the one hand, it seems potentially arbitrary, potentially labor intensive, potentially some parachute research might slip through the net. What are your learnings so far about how that's going? We've only got like 2 minutes, and maybe you want to follow this up later, but it is something that we're actively interested in. because I do believe that, you know, if we want to do, if we want transformative change, if we want to really challenge the power dynamics in the way that global health in particular is run, we need to be interrogating these kind of initiatives. And the other thing I wanted to say was I was one of the people who had real faith in Madhu and the whole PLOS Global Health, PLOS Global Public Health initiative, and I'm still rooting for you, and that's why I've agreed to be an academic editor.
Thank you, Angela. So, you know, we've been watching very closely both the reflexivity statement initiative as well as our global inclusivity and global research policy. I agree with you that we need to evaluate it. I think that that's something I believe it's been about 1.5 years that we've been implementing this policy. So asking authors to upload, well, actually requiring our authors to upload questionnaires when the first and corresponding author are not from the country. And I believe last author as well, not from the country where the research was performed. But as of yet, we haven't been able to really take a systematic look to see how's it going? How is this information being used? Are we changing any kind of research practices? I do know that with the kind of dissemination of this policy and the expectation that we have at PLOS for looking at authorship and kind of the process of research writ large, I do think that our communities, especially within PLOS Global Public Health, are being much more proactive when thinking about authorship teams and research processes from the very beginning, because it's starting to, the process now is becoming kind of better known, I think, to know that you're going to have to explain this through one form or another, whether it's a reflexivity statement, whether it's the global inclusivity form. And so authors are thinking about that as they're forming their teams. You know, we are actually very closely aligned with the reflexivity statement. PLOS GPH actually published an opinion about the reflexivity statement.
Oh yes, on which I'm a co-author.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're all kind of on the same team. We're taking different approaches, and I think it's really important for us to learn from each other and to understand how can we improve research, and how can we eliminate parachute research and make sure that we're really being truly inclusive.
And Atlantic Global Health, like last month, have adopted it as well. So, you know, if down the line, if we can all get, you know, these big journals, BMJ Global Health, PLOS Global Health, Lancet Global Health, you know, TMIH, if we can all get in the same room and you know, throw the ball around in terms of what we've learned, I think that would be really,
I mean, this is one instance where there's no competition here. We all have the same goal, I think, in terms of this end goal of decolonization of research writ large. And I think that we have a lot to learn from each other. And I'm pleased that we're doing it in different ways. I think that that is the way that we're really going to learn the most about what's effective and what's not.
Yeah, and just to emphasize for the non-global public health editors still on the call, that this is something that's very much happening still in the climate and water space too. So since we launched this policy on the PLOS portfolio, we've seen a kind of ripple effect through other publishers in the environmental science space. So one example, last year, I took part in a panel at the EGU meeting in Vienna. And since then, EGU, European Geophysical Union, have begun to develop a policy of their own, which broadly mirrors the PLOS policy, which I understand they're intending to launch quite soon. So we've seen that kind of cascade effect through some of the other major players in this sector of the publishing space, which is fantastic to see. And as Angela was saying, you know, this is something where we all need to be working, making a concerted effort in the same direction. And I think we're beginning to see that movement coalescing. So that's really gratifying.
Super.
On that note, I think that's a great way to end. Thank you so much for joining. This has been really wonderful. I'm so glad you were able to join us. The chat and everything is saved automatically, so I'll send out a follow-up email with the recording and all of the questions that were asked, including some we didn't get to that were pre-submitted as well. So thank you again, and I hope we can do this again. It was really nice to see all of your faces.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all so
care.
much.
Bye.
Bye. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.